soon. Cool. It's going. We're on Facebook now. Facebook. Let's see if I can see myself.
So how about going? Oh, go ahead. Go for it.
I was just going to say, hey, hey, welcome everybody. True Consequences Go Vocal live stream, True Crime Thursday. I said go vocal, I meant get vocal. Good Lord. So I'm waiting here for my co-host to join. Oh crap, my audio's out of sync. Hold on. I didn't want to look like a kung fu. I still look kind of like a kung fu guy. I hate that. So I'm waiting for my co-host to join. Hopefully she doesn't have too much of a hard time getting logged in. Let me see if she messaged me. Today I'm going to be joined by the host of the Mesa podcast, and I'm hopeful that she's not having any issues. So bear with us. I'm on, but I don't see the channel from the email you sent. Okay. See if I can send her a link. There it is. No. All right, hold on. Twitter is over capacity. Perfect.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
It shouldn't be a thing. All right, I just sent her the link. Hopefully she can get here. So I'm sorry if you're watching on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube. Just waiting for my co-host to join me here, and we will get started as soon as she does. And if you want to interact with me while we're doing this, go to getvocal.com, getvokl.com. You can see me on the True Crime Thursday hashtag. You can download the Get Vocal app if you want to use your phone, or you can do it from a computer, whatever works best for you. But that's Tierna. Okay, hey, grab
Hi.
There she is.
Hi, how are you? Sorry, I'm a little disheveled. I'm out in the country in southern New Mexico, outside of Silver City, literally in the middle of nowhere.
Wow.
Are you in Bayard? Because that's middle of nowhere by
right?
Silver City.
Yeah. So that's on the other side of Silver City.
Okay.
I grew up in Cliff, New Mexico, Cliff Gila area. It's like a half hour outside of Silver. It's in the it's on the Gila National Forest. And so I'm moving my mom back down here after 18 years. Oh my God, I know.
One of my closest friends from college, she's from Cliff. She coached basketball. Or I don't know if she's still PJ Bryant.
Yeah, I know her. Yeah.
Her and I went to college together, and my daughter's dad is from Bayard. He went to Cobre.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
All right, listen.
It's such a small town.
For those of you that are not from New Mexico that are watching this, you have to understand that this happens like all the time. As soon as you're like, I'm from this place, yeah, then they know your cousin and they're probably related to you. It's just a crazy thing. There's not that many people here. That's probably why.
No, and I found the one spot in town that, so you have to have Verizon in order to get cell service anywhere down here. And we don't have the landline hooked up to get Wi-Fi yet where my mom's going to be living. So I drove around this morning because I was like panicked because I'm I got to be able to make a phone call and also do this tonight, but just to call my husband and my children back home and anything, just emergencies. So I drove around this morning and I found a cafe and they said, well, you can use our Wi-Fi. And so there you go. So I'm sitting,
Oh,
this is
good.
the third time today of driving up to this cafe to use their Wi-Fi.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Well,
Hopefully you
welcome.
frequent flyer
Thank
miles.
you. Yeah, right.
So I am so excited to have you here, Tierna. I think
Thank
that when I found out about your podcast, I got really excited. I've wanted to see more New Mexico podcasts, and I know there's quite a few now.
Yeah.
But it just makes me really happy and really kind of full of this state pride to see that we're starting to have different shows that are focused on the state, and your show got me really excited because being a true crime podcaster already, and you know, I did cover the West Mesa Bone Collector, probably not as good as you're going to do it, or not as well as you're going to do it, but I was so excited.
Say differently, you know, I mean, there's a couple of podcasts who have done it. They've just done it in a different way than really. I mean, obviously, no one's done a podcast that is only dedicated to it. Usually, the few times that a podcast has really ever covered it, I think there's one podcast that maybe devoted like 2 or 3 episodes to it, and it was years ago, and they weren't from here. I don't know where they were doing it from, but they weren't from here. You know, does like an episode on it, and for like the true crime podcast and stuff. And I just, you know, with a lot of the intimate knowledge that I have of the case, and just working in media here for as long as I have, I knew that I could do a lot more with it, and in a different way, you know. And I love podcasts. I've been loving them for so long, and I just thought this is the perfect thing, that if I'm going to start doing podcasts, this is the perfect case to start with. And I know that I can do at least 9 or 10 episodes, and who knows, as I'm going through it, I might even be able to do more, but I know that I can do at least 9 or 10 episodes in order to tell the story in the way that I want it to be told, at least for my work on it, you know?
Sure. Well, I really respect the work that you've done so far.
Thank you.
I'm not caught up. I haven't listened to the most current episode yet, but I'm ready to.
I don't think I've made myself any friends, but that's okay.
Well, I'm probably making some enemies. I'm probably making some enemies too with my show. So
it's okay. I have to tell you that I just listened to the episode that you did with your mom about your brother, and I was like, wow, that I have to really commend you, because I think that took a lot of bravery to put yourself out that way. And you know, just to tell the story the way that you did with your mom. And I want to give you a lot of props for that. And I can't imagine what you went through and are still going through, and your mom, especially, you know, being a mother. But I'm glad that you put it out there and you did it in such a personal way, but it could not have been easy. And I just kept thinking that the whole time. I was like, oh my God, you know, but I think that was really brave of you to put yourself out there like that.
Thank you. That means a lot. Yeah, it was a challenge. I think the buildup to it was more challenging than actually doing it. Just because we have all this, you know, emotional baggage as a family around it.
Sure.
And but when my mom and I sat down and actually did it, there was some catharsis that happened, and there was some healing that happened, and it was really beautiful. And I feel like we're both in a better spot emotionally having done that.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, I mean, so I don't know how you want this to go. I've never done a Get Vocal before. I think it's really cool, and I want to do more of them. I was going to ask you if you don't mind, and if you let me know whatever you want to talk about. But so I found yours. I think I was looking at, you know, when I was searching true crime New Mexico like tags, you know, is how I stumbled upon yours. And I think it's a great name. It's very appropriate for anyone who's from here. Would be like, oh, I get it. What made you, besides the fact that true crime is, so popular, and we have some of the most bizarre shit that happens here. So
super bizarre.
I think that it's really good, just in working in news and stuff, and you tell people and they're like, what? It's like, yeah, I know, man. I don't know. I don't know if it's the desert. I don't know if it's just New Mexico. I don't know. I have no idea. But I mean, It definitely warrants being able to do so many episodes on the weird shit that happens here. Is that why you decided to do it, or why did you decide to do it?
So there's a couple of reasons. The first thing is I'm totally obsessed with the weird shit. Like I've always been that way since I was little. Yeah. I remember being in the library and like reading about UFOs and ghosts and murder and mafias and like all this crazy stuff, and just being totally obsessed, and I couldn't get enough of it. So that's always been there for me. And I think that morbid curiosity kind of carried over into adulthood. But the primary kind of drive for this whole thing is to highlight some of the issues that we have here in New Mexico. And that starts with, with me at home and being a family member of a victim who never received any kind of justice or even a day in court. It's a problem here, and it's been a problem here for a long time. And especially as it pertains to children. So that motivation really pushed me to start the show, along with my obsession of all the weird shit. But primarily it comes from a place of really wanting to give a voice to victims' families who don't have a voice.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I think that that's really awesome. And what is your background?
As in like education and
work? Like how did you get into podcasting in general?
So I'm not a journalist. I'm not like you. I'm not a journalist.
No, I mean a lot of podcasters aren't. So I'm always curious, like how people get into it.
So I've always liked podcasts. Even before they got really popular, I was into them. And I just feel like it's a really good medium. Plus I'm super self-conscious about being on video. So this is really awkward for me. So I figured if I could just do my voice, then that would be cool.
I know you got a good podcast.
Oh, thank you.
So I think that's one of the things that I really love about the podcasting medium. Even more so just having worked in commercial news is I love the independence of it. As with anything, if anyone can do it, you have some really good stuff along with some not so great stuff. But I feel like it's such a great medium for people who are just starting out or have a really good idea or whatever, and they don't have to worry so much about like, well, am I going to be able to say this? Or what if the people I work for don't want me to say it this way or whatever? Like when you work in commercial news, it's extremely restrictive. And, when all this stuff happened in 2009, like if my news director didn't want to do a story, we didn't do it. That's it. And honestly, until they started finding the bones, nobody wanted to do this story. Nobody did. And I talk about that a lot. It's when Maggie Shepard, who was the newspaper journalist who covered in 2007 all of the women that we know of, totally that we know of, who were being looked for by a few detectives. She did this story and literally no one did anything with it. She didn't even do anything with it herself after that. And I talked to her about that in the second episode. And, why didn't you follow up, and why, whatever, did you not have support? And she definitely had support, but there just wasn't really much to say because it was still nothing. We still haven't found anything. No, we don't know where they are. No, whatever. And it never really turned into a big thing with APD either. It wasn't like they put a big task force together. It was still just the same detective looking for her girls. And I understand that, especially in commercial news land, that's not very sexy,
Sure.
honestly. And that the idea that if it bleeds, it leads. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a million other things that are going on rather than a group of women who a lot of people were able to dismiss as just prostitutes. And it's like, nobody really cared. Nobody really wanted to do anything with it. And I think that that's extremely sad. And I think that what a disservice to those women. And I'm not saying that maybe anything more could have happened, or we could have caught the guy or anything like that. I just think that, I just feel like they deserved a lot more than one story, one time in a period of 7 years that they all went missing.
Yeah.
And I would not be surprised if there's quite a few more women than just the original 17 that could be anywhere out on the Mesa, honestly.
Well, yeah. And for the people that are not from here, it may be hard for them to understand how expansive this area is and how desolate.
Yeah.
And even though they're building houses and developments and everything around there, there's still so much open space. To think that maybe there could be additional burial grounds is scary, to say the least, I think.
Well, and the big thing too, and even the lieutenant who I was talking to, he even absolutely admitted that they could already have been, built on top of already.
Yeah.
Either before 2009 or since. I mean, the thing is you can't. It's it's a double-edged sword, because it's like you have this gigantic hundreds of miles, and you just, because I'm sure not even just with these girls, with anything Native American or any, bones, you're not going to dig up hundreds of miles just in case someone buried somebody out there. Like, what, you know what I mean? What do you do? And so the chances are that some of these girls are, do have a house built on top of them. It's macabre, I know, but it's reality.
It's possible.
And the only reason that these bones were found in the first place is because of all that construction, digging them up and tamping it down and digging it up. And then because construction stopped because of the economy crashing, someone was able to find it. But if they hadn't have done that, now, granted, whoever buried them didn't bury them very deep, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, if they're 3 feet deep, if they hadn't been digging things up with these backhoes, getting it ready to build a house, they very easily could not have been found for a very long time or ever.
Yeah. And who knows, if there were remains that were damaged during the process of building some of those houses out there, and how many of those, if there were any remains that were just buried and hidden because of that, as they're getting run over by a backhoe or something like that. That's, I never thought about it that way.
Have you ever been out there to that specific site? Yeah, it's very surreal.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. I mean, I know that they're building the little 1 acre park there as a memorial, and but there's still like 98 acres that are just open there. I heard somebody, I want to say, so I talked to City Councilor Clarissa Pena. That district is her area, and she's been spearheading that memorial park to be built. And I talked to her and I asked her, who owned the land, if it was still KB Homes, and it is. They plan on building more homes over that area.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because their contention, in conjunction with APD, is that they have done their due diligence in waiting for 11 years, and APD has not been able to find any other remains, and the city has built a memorial park, so they're honoring them. And it's 100 acres of land that they own that essentially they can't do anything with, and they've been building all the way around it. And so there's this 100-acre land that, is just sitting there that is becoming more and more valuable as expansion of the city moves west in that direction. And I haven't been able to talk to anyone from KB. And they're pretty corporate and they don't have a headquarters here or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I don't see them just readily coming out and admitting, yeah, we're going to go ahead and start construction. But I talked to the city councilor and she said, once they built the memorial park and they've been working with APD to make sure that they can't find any other bones. And, it's been 11 years. And if KB wants to build on top of it, it's technically their land. And I was like, what?
Holy
can
cow.
you imagine? Can you imagine buying a house out there, like on that land? Like, I don't know. I just even knowing that, like, why would you want to buy a house there? Why would you want to build on top of it? But why would you want to buy a house there?
Yeah, I agree with Melanie. Melanie on the chat said that is mind blowing. I agree. Yeah. I can't imagine. I wouldn't buy a house there. I'm kind of like a Northeast snob, like I'm like, I don't cross.
Me too. Oh, me too.
I don't cross the river.
No, I know. When I drove out there, I was like, oh my God, this is so far out here. This is so far out here. And it looks a lot different because I think the last time I went out there was about 6 months ago. And it looks a lot different than it did in 2009 because, again, it is extremely built up. There's like a stadium that's out there. There's more schools that are out there. Yep. There's so many more neighborhoods built up all the way around it than there were 10 years ago. And I even think, the houses that are directly right across the street from it, like, knowing that that's like right out your back door, that's just what you're looking at all the time. Like, oh my God.
It's just like bad juju everywhere.
Right?
Yeah.
I totally think it's like, that's not, I would never have a part in that. I don't understand why, I don't know. I don't really get it. It seems like it's something that they shouldn't be able to do, but they own the land and it's not considered to be an active crime scene anymore.
Right.
Because they've found the bones.
So
that they say they found all the bones that they say they can find in that area. And since it's not an active crime scene anymore, KB can build over it if they want to.
Do you know if APDs use like ground penetrating radar or anything like that in that area?
So they say that they have, and they say that they continually do, like, they'll do flyovers, and if they see like a ground that looks disturbed in an unnatural way, then they will. They did it last December. So December of 2018 was the last time that they let me know that they did that. And they said it turned out to be nothing. But at the same time, they don't own that equipment themselves. It's like $1 million piece of equipment. So they have to borrow it or lease it each time. So they have to make sure that it's worth it each time they do it. Because it's not like they just have it at their disposal.
Right.
And they can't justify buying that right now. So they can't just go around checking every little part that looks like it's like a weirdly disturbed piece of earth there. So it's tough. They're in a tough spot, because they know that there's more women out there. They absolutely know. But they don't know where to look. Probably they're out there on the Mesa where, it's such a vast landscape.
It's so big.
And you don't have any real suspects. At the end of the day, they don't have any real suspects. No one is coming forward trying to talk. No witnesses come forward. They don't have anything. So if you don't have anyone who is pointing you in the direction of any specific place to look, you're left with just hundreds of miles. Chances are they're probably not 100 miles away since they were so close to the city before. But if they're not built on top of, they're probably not that far away, maybe within like a 20-mile radius, seeing as how close they were before, how close together they were before, but also how close to the city they were. And it's different. It depends on who you talk to, because so the newest episode that I just did that I put out this Sunday, I talked to an ex-APD sergeant. He's now a lawyer. And he was working during that time. He didn't work on the case, but he worked. He was on APD at the time, and he had a lot of friends who worked on the case. He says he does not actually feel that it's one person. He thinks that it's multiple people.
Multiple people.
Yeah.
So more than two.
That's what he believes.
Wow.
And he was a sergeant with APD for 8 years.
Holy cow.
Well, I don't know if like a group of friends, Lizard, maybe more so, less of a group of friends, but possibly more a group of people who may have other connections that we don't know about.
Oh.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You're blowing my mind a little bit.
He said it. He said it, and I put it out there, and
freaking out.
I know, right? And so, no, and he doesn't mean like a cult or anything like that. He talks about this, and I'm going to do a more expansive interview that I put out on Patreon with him, or Patreon. I've heard different people say it different ways. But he believes, for a number of reasons, that there is and has existed for a very long time. He kept calling it a third rail. Basically, people in power, whether it's politics or government or people with money or both, who have a lot of connections and may utilize the services of women.
My face is melting.
They believe are expendable.
Oh my God.
And there you go.
Oh, I can't.
I know.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. And he said it all on the record. I was like, are you sure he's like, what do I have to be afraid of? I don't have anything to be afraid of. He's like, let him come get me. And I was like, oh, I'm all right, man.
You guys, okay. I mean, this is,
I know this, everybody know, honestly, let's be real. Like, would it ever surprise you that, like some judge high up or some politician high up who was into escorts or who was into drugs or whatever, use the services of any one of these women, or, had connections with the women, who the women worked for or anything like that? And maybe some of these girls were used as mules or whatever. And then you're expendable, right? Because they know that nobody's going to go looking for you. They're not going to go looking for you. Wow. And some of the families did, but you don't have a lot of support, because the minute that they look up, the criminal background of some of these girls, they go, well, they're not under 18. They're living a transient lifestyle. Some of them, you don't exactly know when she went missing. Maybe she went missing 2 weeks ago was the last time anybody saw her. That doesn't mean that she's dead. That doesn't, or a number of things. And that's what makes it really hard to track down a lot of things with this case, is that there are two women that have an actual date attached to the time that they went missing. Two of them. The last time that their family saw them, and they have an actual date. They don't know if that's when they were killed, but they have an actual date of the last time that anyone saw them. The rest of them, there is no date attached to it. So it's more like they went missing in the month of.
Right.
Or the last time they were seen was around this area sometime in this year. And when you have a population that you are utilizing or targeting whoever's doing it, whether they're targeting them or they're utilizing their services, however possible, when you know that, it makes it a lot easier to get away with stuff like this. Because really, who's going to come out? Who's going to come out? Like her friends? Really? Her friends are going to go to the cops and say, my friend, the last time I went, I saw her was this time. Well, they may not remember the last time they saw her. They may not think that there was anything weird going on until they didn't see her for a month or something like that. So when you don't have an actual day or time when someone goes missing and you don't really know who they were with at that time, it makes it very hard to track down any one person that could have done this.
Oh my God, you just blew my mind. And that
sorry
never
if
crossed
it's
my
a little
mind.
dark. It's getting dark here, so I've got like
That's okay.
one light on in
That's okay. But when you put it like that, it makes a lot of sense. And I never thought of it that way, but I could totally see how that could happen, and I could see how that could happen here. More so than maybe other places, just because of all the stuff I'm learning about what happens here.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna sit in my back seat where it's a little bit lighter. So sorry.
That's okay.
Hold on.
The idea, though, that sorry, I'm holding on.
I'm gonna keep you on. So I remember. I wish I could. I don't want to say his name. I don't want to slander anybody and get myself in a lot of trouble because obviously I don't have insurance on my podcast if someone were to come after me and sue me. But I'd have to look it up. There was a judge in 2007, 2008 who frequented ladies who worked on the streets. And I remember he kept getting into trouble. He was removed from the bench, but I think he was a district court judge. And he lived down in the country club area. And I remember we covered it because one night he had kidnapped a woman that he had hired, and he was physically abusing her, and he locked her in the house. And the only reason that anyone knew about it was because she was trying to jump out of the second floor window and was like screaming at the neighbors to call the cops. And he was a judge. And the same judge, had gotten in trouble because he got pulled over at a roadblock. He had tried to run away from the roadblock, and he had a woman in the car with him also. And they had blow everywhere all over the car and everything like that. This same judge. So, it is not just stuff that's in the movies, and it's not just unique to New Mexico because, with money and power.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So if you were to tell me, I'm not saying that this guy had anything to do with it, but if you were to tell me that there was a lot of people who were into this same kind of stuff and, did whatever was necessary to make sure that nobody talked about it, if anyone knew about it, that would not surprise me at all.
It wouldn't surprise me either. But it just never crossed my mind at all. And so that just kind of blew me away for a second. So I was shocked.
No, it's fine. And I don't know if he's right or not. I mean, I'm not a cop, and I'm not a detective or anything, but I find it really interesting that a detective on that force really believes that. Because I asked him, I said, do you think it was any of the two people who are persons of interest who've never moved beyond persons of interest to actual suspects? Right. Do you think that it could be them? And he was like, no.
Really?
I don't think it was them. Oh, no. And, it's really funny because I know no cop who's actually a cop right now is going to tell you on the record, yeah, I think it's this guy or that guy. And I've heard so many different people think it's definitely Blea or it's definitely Montoya or whatever. I have not met, I don't, I don't know enough people who all agree on one person. And I've met several people who don't think it's either one of those guys. And I think when you have something that's 11 years now down the road, there's no new breaks in the case, you can't actually get enough evidence to make the two people that you have even move on to actually be a suspect, nor do you get in anything that really concretely points to anybody else as being a suspect. Even though they say they get hundreds of tips a year, well, where's that going? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just sort of like, if that person is alive, they're not talking, or they don't live here, or it's not one person.
Those are all very good points.
Yeah.
So what's your connection to this case, aside from the fact that, you felt like it wasn't being told properly and that these women weren't being honored properly? What else drove you to do this show that you've created?
Well, I really love podcasts, and I wanted to be able to do a podcast on something that I was really passionate about, but that I felt like that I could really sink my teeth into journalistically, and was something that I knew enough about that I could really start working with people that I knew who had connections. I have a friend who's a private investigator that I work with a lot on things like this. And she used to be a journalist as well. And so she's been helping me a lot because she covered this case and she knows a lot of players. And so I wanted to be able to do it in a way that I could really, be proud of journalistically. But also what I really love about podcasts is just the independence of it. Because again, working in commercial news, you are told by somebody else what the story is. Yeah. And that's why I don't work in commercial news anymore. and I work for an independent newspaper, because I think that there's a lot of stories to be told out there that are not covered by commercial news. And I think that this is the perfect medium to be able to do that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of your work, so I had to say that out loud.
Thanks.
Do you have plans to do more beyond this podcast, like other cases?
Yeah, now that I feel like I'm getting better at it and it's getting easier. I've been kind of exploring different ideas. I had this one idea and I've been wanting to do it forever. I wanted to do a coffee table book, and that just didn't happen because I had kids and I don't have time. And then I thought, well, I could do a podcast on it. And I woke up and I had the name and everything. And I Googled it to make sure that nobody else had it. And of course, somebody had already done it and had the same name that I did. So it wasn't that original. But I wanted to do something on ghost towns and really tell the story of the ghost town, like go there and talk to anybody who's still living there. And because I think ghost towns have a really fascinating history, and anyone who like Mogollon or something, there's like 12 people who live there. And I went there several times when I was a kid, and I stayed there once in a cabin. It was like the creepiest thing ever. But it's like cool, like it's a cool creepy. And I kind of want to talk to you, like, why are you one of 12 people who still lives in this place? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's really cool. And I was like, I'm going to call it Ghost Town. And then I can do so many things. Well, there's already a podcast that does that. So I'm thinking of different ideas, and I don't know if it'll be true crime or not. I think that the Southwest, and obviously specifically New Mexico, there's just such a wealth of stories to be told here. And so it'll be focused on that. Cool. To a degree. And I just don't know yet what that'll be, but I'm a storyteller, and I think I'm fascinated by other people's stories, and I think that this is a great medium to give people a voice. And so I want to keep being able to do that if I can.
That's awesome. So did you learn anything that you didn't know before? Like, I know that you learned from that APD officer, the former detective.
Right, that it could be multiple people.
Yeah.
I never, so there's also an episode that hasn't come out yet. I talked to a professor from UNM who studies the way that serial killers communicate. And, it makes sense when you really think about it, but it was another thing I never really thought about. He was just talking about the one of the reasons why this case is so weird, and different than a lot of other serial killer murder cases. And he also didn't think that it was one person. So there you go.
Really?
Yeah, but for a different reason. He said what makes this case so hard to solve and will continue to make this case so hard to solve, and why he doesn't think it was just one person, is no one has ever tried to communicate. They've never reached out to cops. They've never reached out to the media. They've never left clues. They've never tried to guess who I am kind of thing, or see if you can catch me, or anything like that. So it's not a traditional serial murder case in that sense of, he was saying something that he teaches communications at UNM, and I think Vice and, ABC and a couple of other people had interviewed him, years ago about this case, just because they knew that he had studied serial killers and stuff. But he was telling me that he had reviewed like hundreds of serial murder cases. And this is one of the handful out of hundreds that he had studied where there was zero communication from the person who was doing the killing with either the media or the cops, or anything like that. Usually if it's a serial killer, they want to engage because they want to try to prove how smart they are. Like, you can't catch me, or I can keep doing this and you can't do anything about it. Or they want to get caught. Really, in the end, they want to get caught. And none of that has ever happened with this case. There's no clues. There's no, there's nothing. There's nothing. Yeah, and the two people that they have, one guy's dead, so there's nothing they can do about it now. But there's no clues for him either. It's all circumstantial. And then the other guy, who is in jail for a number of other heinous crimes, he is adamantly saying that he didn't do it. And they don't have anything that really, other than circumstantial stuff, they don't have anything that really points to the fact that, yeah, he did it either.
So do you think that the person or persons responsible are still doing this?
I don't think they're doing it here.
Okay.
I think if they are here, I think that they've stopped. Or they've stopped for a little while. I don't think that it's someone who's transient, though. I do think that it is someone or some people who are here. And I think that they, or that person has stopped for now. Yeah.
It's just such a spooky,
horrible
case. And I just feel so bad for the families of these women and for the women themselves, just the way they were treated in the, from the police department to the media to whatever, just being kind of like forgotten and dismissed just because of the fact that they were sex workers is,
well, and actually not all of them were.
Not all, I know not all of them were. Yeah, sorry.
Not all of them were. But
there was a runaway teen.
There was a runaway teen. She had a history of prostitution as well, but she was a runaway teen. But there was one girl, she was 15 and she had no history of anything. She happened to be with her cousin and that was it. Wrong place, wrong time. That's it. Yeah.
But the majority of the women were largely just discounted, right? Because of their lifestyle.
Yeah. And who's ever doing it knows that or thinks of that person as being expendable for that reason. Yeah. And I hate to say it, but for a long time they were right in that I'm not saying those people were expendable.
That was the mentality.
The mentality was these people were expendable. And so it went on for a very long time.
That was the mentality
much
for a
longer
long
than
time.
it ever should have.
Yeah.
Had these women been anybody different.
Yeah. 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 Like had it been a rich socialite that was
not
missing,
even just a rich socialite. If it had been anybody in my group of friends, and we're nobodies, but if it had been, can you imagine 11 women that you know personally, 11 women that you know go missing over a span of 6-7 years, and you don't really hear anything about it, and very few people in the police department really pay attention to you, and you don't hear anything about it in the media, and nobody you know is talking about it, and no one's saying, oh my God, did you hear? Or, oh my God, what happened to this woman? Oh, isn't this weird? There's 11 women going missing. There's got to be something going on here. In 6 years, 11 women that you know have gone missing. That would not happen.
No,
it just wouldn't. It would not happen. It wouldn't happen beyond 1 or 2 women. It would never happen with 11 women.
Absolutely. You're right.
Yeah.
So Lizard, I'm not sure if I understand this question. So what place would be ideal for that lifestyle outside of the Mesa? What lifestyle? Are you talking about sex work?
No, that's the oldest profession.
Murdering?
What I'm saying is she said that if they are still out there, they're probably, and this is probably a poor word choice because I am a teacher, so my profession is a practice, and it's never been como se dice, there's no like definite way of doing it, same as what these people, predators if you will, are doing to people. So if they're not practicing this lifestyle in the Mesa, you said they could possibly be out there doing it somewhere else. What do you think would be their ideal hunting grounds?
Oh, I think that they're definitely going after women like this, just maybe somebody somewhere else. I don't think that I don't think that they are targeting women in a different social class or in a different part of town with a different lifestyle. I don't think that they're targeting, or even in a different city. I think that they're very specifically either targeting, or these women happen to be a byproduct of a lifestyle or a group of people who are part of a lifestyle, and these women are a byproduct that need to be gotten rid of,
disposed of.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I think that the idea that maybe their burial ground moved is something. I do think that maybe, hopefully, I don't know, this is just me hoping that maybe if the number of women that went missing then started to go missing now, that hopefully they would pay more attention to that.
I mean, you would hope. There's a lot of things that are in place right now that were not back then. One of the things is Safe Street is an organization that exists now, and it is right in the middle of where most of these women frequented or maybe went missing. It's like,
is that the one that Cynthia V. Hill started?
She's part of it. She's part of it. And she, from the Toy Box Murders.
Yeah.
So she's part of it, and it's a very tiny nonprofit that basically has no budget. They have a very, very small office, and they're right at Wyoming and Central. So they're right in the middle of it, and they put out a bad guy list every week. They pass it around to the women. They put it on their website. They're trying to be more proactive, and they came out of this whole case. Their whole organization came out of this whole case because they felt like nobody was paying attention, and they weren't. Nobody was paying attention. And so they felt like somebody needed to do something to give these women a voice, but also to let them know that somebody's paying attention. And I think that the work that they're doing is amazing, and it's really commendable. And I think, I would love to believe that the police department is being more vigilant And because I don't think that they could handle another PR. Yeah, I would love to say that it's more than a PR move, but I know better. I don't think that they could handle it. I don't care who the women are. I don't think they could handle another PR nightmare of like, hey, look how many more women went missing and you still didn't pay attention and it already happened once before. I don't think that they could handle something like that. So I think that they are trying to be more vigilant. That's kind of it. Yeah, I think they're trying to be more vigilant. I think that they're trying to work with groups like Safe Street. I think that they are trying to do more outreach, however possible. I think it also depends on who the administration is, whether, the administration who happens to run the city at the time feels like they want a certain type of policing, like community policing, or, because one of the big problems that women who are sex workers, whether it was then or now, and again, I talked to the lieutenant about this, is that, okay, I'm on the street and I'm a sex worker and I've been beaten up and I've been raped. But if I go to you, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to arrest me? Because I know what I just did was illegal, but I don't feel like there's anybody to listen to me. And I feel like I can't tell you because I'm scared. I'm scared that he's going to come after me. I'm scared you won't believe me. And I'm scared that I'm going to get in trouble too. And so I just don't tell anybody. And they're trying to be better about that. And so I'll give them, props for that. They recognize that was definitely, that is a fear. I would not say that they are 100% better, but I would say that they're working on it. And what he told me is he's like, well, if you look at it this way, prostitution is a misdemeanor charge. Rape and battery is a felony. So we have to take one and say, okay, this is a misdemeanor, but we're willing to let this go because we have to go after someone who's committing felonies. And I said, well, good. I mean, I'm glad.
That's good.
But, is that 100%? No. I mean, they still are arresting women on the streets anyway. So there is still a fear of cops out there.
And that probably depends on the officer too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
If an officer has a bias against that, type of profession, then they may react differently to somebody who is more.
I mean, if you're a cop and you arrest a woman who's a sex worker, you're not going to get in trouble for it.
Right.
Now, if that woman comes up to you and looks like she's been, that you can see, I mean, what if she's been raped and you can't see, right? And he says, well, no, I haven't. Let's say that the guy is there or whatever. I mean, that's one of the things that had happened with Lorenzo Montoya. And, he had been followed by cops to the airport near the Sunport. And he had picked up a woman on Central. They followed them to the Sunport. And he had been trying to strangle her. And when the cop came up to the car, and he'd been trying to strangle her and he had hit her several times, and I mean, he was arrested for it, but nothing ever happened to him as a result of it. I mean, he didn't serve any jail time. He didn't, whatever. And the cop was there and saw it happening and followed them and sat in his car and watched, and then didn't go up to the car for a while to catch them in the act because he was trying to catch both of them. So again, I understand that sex work is not legal here. I get that. But at the same time, if you create a culture of fear that women feel like they can't report when things happen to them, you're also going to add to that idea that nobody cares what happens to me, and that I am expendable. And you also give more validity to the predator in thinking that those women are more expendable and that nobody cares, and nobody will listen to you if you tell them anyway.
It empowers and emboldens the horrible shitbags that do stuff like this to feel like they can continue to do it without any kind of repercussion. And it's disgusting to me.
Yeah. And you're right. Lizard, which is the lesser of two evils? I mean, in my mind, I I personally think that sex work should be legal. I understand that a lot of people don't feel that way. I personally think that sex work should be legal, but also I think that I think if it is going to be a misdemeanor, then you have to be willing to hear her out when she says there's a predator out there.
For sure. For sure. And I think that goes for any victim of sexual assault or assault, physical assault. Like, fucking believe victims.
Believe victims and believe survivors. Yeah, absolutely.
Please.
Because you know what? A lot of these women, I don't want to say the only reason that they're on the street. And I don't know what the statistics are, but I've seen a little bit of FBI stuff. A lot of these women, in fact, the greater majority of these women have already been sexually abused at one point in their life anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah, I'm sure that's a high statistic there.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Women trying to survive. Yeah. Anybody trying to survive. It's, I agree with you, Lizard.
Yeah.
So,
is it
we
really
have 4
dark?
minutes.
Is it dark?
No, you're fine. Okay. You're good. We can see you.
Okay.
So we only have 3 minutes now.
Okay.
I want you to take some time to talk about your show, talk about where people can find your show and more information and all that stuff. Because first of all, I just want to thank you for the work you're doing, because I think it's really important. And I'm glad that somebody can dive in as deeply as you have. And I'm excited to see all the other episodes or listen to all the other episodes come out. But give a little plug for your show, talk about where people can find you, Patreon, all that stuff.
So I'm at patreon.com/the Mesa. Everything that I have is the Mesa. So Facebook, Twitter, everything is the Mesa. Super easy to remember. The podcast is on pretty much, I think, almost any platform that you can, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, anything really. Or you can go to anchor.fm/the Mesa. But yeah, at Patreon, I have longer format interviews that are uncut with people who I personally think have a lot of really interesting insights that just can get kind of long and winded and are harder to include so much of what they say, but are still valid. And I think it's good to get the information out there. So I'll be putting up more of those actually in the next coming weeks. Got a lot of time on my hands now.
What's the minimum donation monthly for Patreon?
$3.
So for only $3, you can get access to unedited.
$3.
The price of one coffee a month.
Well,
just a regular coffee
with no flavor or anything.
Yeah, just a regular coffee.
Yeah, just regular coffee. Just regular coffee.
You can have access to all this cool content. I think I might have to join because I'm fascinated.
Yay! I'll join yours too. Yeah. Keep up your good work. I think you're doing a lot of really cool stuff.
Oh, thank you, Tierna. I hope that we can, talk some more in the future.
Let's do it again, and I'll have you on my vocal. I'll have you
should
on.
Join.
Now that I know how this works, I'll have you on.
So I'll give you a contact to reach out to, and they can get you all set up. It's pretty easy.
Sweet.
Yeah, and the cool thing is your fans can tip you on here, which is also really cool. But yeah, go listen to the Mesa. It's an awesome show.
Thank you.
They're short episodes, so you don't have to really commit like you do with my show. You can actually, 20 minutes is at the most. Sometimes they're 15. But there's a lot of good information in those short episodes. So go check it out.
Yeah. Thank you.
What do you have to lose?
Yeah.
Thanks, Tierna.
Absolutely. Thanks. Have a good night.
One more quick thing. I want to make sure nobody has any questions before we wrap up. No questions? No questions? All right.
Going once.
Thank you, Lizard.
Okay.
Thank you, Grizzle.
Thank you. Have a good night. Bye.